Hey everyone, I'm Steve and I'm here in the shop at the Woodturning store. And this will be our last part in a multi-part series of how to turn a bowl using carbide tools. So let's take a look at the bowl. Like I've said, we've gotten to this point over a few different videos. And at this point, what we have done is we have hollowed out the inside using Hurricane Carbide Tools. You see a little bit of tear out there on the end grain, and we'll tackle that with some sandpaper in a few minutes. And then we have the outside shape of the bowl here. We have this tenon, which is what we're going to turn off today using cold jaws. This is that crack that we talked about. It's filled with CA glue. It's holding steady. The crack hasn't penetrated through to the inside, so we'll be okay for now. We're using the Evolution SK100 chuck with 100 millimeter jaws. I'll mount the bowl back in here. And like I said, it's been a few weeks. And when I turn this lathe on, you'll see that we're a little bit out of round. So the first thing that I'll do is I'll take a skim cut using the carbide finishing tool. Let's get started with that. Put on my glasses. Set my tool rest so that my finishing tool will be at center height of the lathe. We'll turn the speed up high. We are on the low range, so this will be about 1300 RPM. Okay, we have just a little bit more to go. So I've trued up the outside and the rim, which is important when you'll see in a few minutes when we remount this onto the cold jaws. We want the outside to be true. It's like I said, it's been about 3 weeks at least, so this has changed some shape. I'm not going to return the inside, but I am going to get out my sander and we will get this tear out. Using the Hurricane bowl sanding kit, Hurricane 80 grit Storm Sandpaper. I'm using a 2-inch disc here because this bowl is fairly small. It's about maybe 5 inches in diameter. 2-inch disc with the soft pad. We'll get the speed up a little slower than when we turned a few minutes ago. It is about 900 RPM. Turn the speed up a little bit. Generating some dust. I'll turn on my record power cam back. Turn the speed up again. Okay, that's 80 grit. We'll switch over to 120 grit. Most of that tear out is gone. I can see a few tool marks here. Turn on the cam back. Still have some tool marks here, but we're much better than we were before. I'll stop there. No one wants to see me go through all the grits of the sandpaper. I'll put the 80 grit back on, and we'll cover the outside. Switch over to 120. Okay. So I have the inside finished, not perfectly, but ready for the next step. Have the outside finished. I can feel that I'm about 1/4 inch thickness here, going to about 3/4 of an inch here. I'll put on some calipers, and you can see right here that my wall thickness is about 1 inch or so down here. So I have plenty of material to remove. When I turn this over on the cold jaws, I'm going to focus right in here and make this shape just a little more pleasant. The next thing I'll do is I'll measure the depth of the bowl. Get out my depth gauge. Adjust the tool to capture the inside depth here and transfer that up to the top. I'll put a little pencil mark here. So that tells me approximately the bottom of the bowl. This bottom surface here is now transferred over to the outside, and that will give me a reference when I flip this over. So let's get the bowl off of the dovetail jaws. Okay, so what we'll do now when we flip it around on the cold jaws is we'll focus on making a transition from this point right here, get rid of this foot, get rid of this tenon, and make a new foot. So now I'm going to switch over to these Axminster 250 millimeter cold jaws. I've already adjusted the buttons so that I'll be able to grip down on this bowl. Let's get it on the lathe. I will take a 4 millimeter Allen key and just tighten up all these buttons which I seem to have forgotten the first time through, but I'll do that now. It can always be a little tricky getting these buttons in the right position. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different locations. I'll switch over to the long key, the long chuck key, which gives me plenty of clearance. People always ask me, why should I purchase the SK114 or a 5-inch chuck compared to a 4-inch chuck? One of the nice things about a 5-inch chuck is you have more jaw travel. So when you're setting your bowls into cold jaws, it's sometimes hard to guess this right. And the 5-inch chuck will allow you some more latitude in gripping down on your piece. Now, cold jaws, while they're great, they're certainly not as strong as dovetail jaws, and you have a pretty reasonable likelihood, especially if you're pushing in this way, to throw the bowl off the lathe. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring the tailstock in. We're going to put pressure onto the piece here. So as we take this material off, we're less likely to lose it. Now, I always forget to do it, and I've forgotten this time, but when you're at the point of turning this tenon, it would be very, very helpful if you had just brought your tailstock in, put a little mark here, and that would help center your bowl on the cold jaws. I forgot to do that, so we'll do the best that we can here. Also, you can see that I'm not going to be able to get a tool in here, which is why I trued up the outside and sanded it at least to 120 grit so we can get a nice grip. If this were oval, that would make gripping on this more complicated. Okay, so I brought my tailstock up and I'm in position here. And again, if I had made a little hole with my live center before turning this around, I would have centered this point right into the hole that I had created. I don't have that. So we're going to turn on the lathe in slow speed and we will check, and you can see up here in the shadow lines that we're running quite true. So that's really good. I'm going to show you something that I like to do with the robust live center. There are many good live centers out there. One Way makes a great one, robust as well. One of the things that I like to do with the robust is I'm going to switch it from this point here. I'm going to switch it from this point here, turn it around, and just use the back side. I'll show you. So take this out, turn it around. So you can see here that, once again, that I've turned the point around. So I've taken the point, put it back into the live center, tighten it down. And what that is going to allow me to do is now I can just use it to push. So now I'm just pushing the bowl into the cold jaws without making any mark whatsoever. I've switched over to the 6-inch tool rest and I've positioned it so that my tool will be at the center line of rotation, checking both sides. I'm not touching the live center here, and most importantly, I'm not touching the cold jaws here. This will become like a spinning propeller blade, so we want to be very careful. I'll take my speed control and I'll move it over on this side. I'll start off at a slow speed. Again, and I don't want to get myself anywhere near this side of the tool rest. And I will use the detail tool at this point. I can even use the finishing tool, take off a little bit more material. I want to lower my tool rest, so I'm going to stop the lathe fully. Don't want to take any chances with the cold jaws here. Readjust for center line, and that looks fine. And again, what I'm doing here is I'm pushing into the cold jaws rather than pushing in from the outside. That matches what we talked about in the first part of the video series, where we always want to cut cross grain. But again, with these cold jaws, it's very, very important to put as little side force as you can this way and as much force as you can that way into the jaw. All right, we'll stop there. So looking down from the top now, we'll see that, remember, this is the bottom of our bowl. We want to leave about 1/4 of an inch of wall thickness, and then maybe another 1/4 inch, 3/16, something like that for your foot. So this surface here will just about be the bottom of the foot. I'll go back to the detailer here and I'll get myself a sharp corner in here. Okay. Over to the finishing tool now, and I can start to reshape the outside. So I've just erased my pencil line, which was the bottom of the bowl, but that's okay because I've established my depth here. Looking down from the top, my curve is a little more pleasant right here. I just have a little bump that I'd like to take off. And I'll make just a bit of a hollow. Back to the detailer. Make a crisp line with the foot. Back to the finisher. Making a concave shape in the foot. While I still have tailstock support, I'll sand the outside. Always being mindful of where those buttons are. So that is sanding the outside. I'll just touch now the foot. You can make the foot either flat or just, I'm talking about the foot right here, either flat or just a slight bit concave so your bowl touches only on the outside. Okay. I'll bring my tool rest back in, always with the lathe off. Go over to my detailer. And now I could very, very carefully take my tenon here and get it down to the point where I'm able to cut it off. I'll stop there for a moment. Just make sure my bowl is nice and secure before I take the tailstock off. Okay. I'm going to slow the speed way down. Okay, now I'll take my tailstock away. And at this point, I have no support whatsoever except from the cold jaws. So I will make sure at this point that all of my force is coming into the piece, nothing this way. And I will just continue to make that surface concave. Checking my tool rest height. There we go. You can hear the vibration. The cold jaw buttons are rubber, and they will flex a little bit. Okay. And I'll just sharpen up the line right here. Give that a nicer look. Take my tailstock away. Take my tool rest away. And this I can just hold my 2-inch disc. I'm using 120 grit paper. Making sure my left hand is far away from the cold jaws. Soften up the edge. You don't want the sandpaper to bounce around, just stay in the lower quadrant here. All right, let's see what we have. Okay, so that's it. Here's our bowl. We have a nice foot. Shape is pleasant. See if you can see it there. We still have that crack. We held on. Crack didn't go through. Again, this was just a practice piece to show you the technique. So here it is. So here's the shape here. Okay, and that's the completion of our series of how to turn a small bowl using Hurricane Carbide Tools. Still needs some sanding, but I hope that was helpful. Please like, subscribe, and share the link to this video. Thanks for watching.